Hi, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about why you might not be getting results in your strength and conditioning program, your fitness program, your workout program. And that comes down to one thing, MED, minimum effective dose. And actually, I've been on to this for some time, probably in the last 15 years. Actually, once I was in my 20s and wasn't getting the results that I wanted, I knew I needed to change things up. And before we go on, guys, I'm Coach Victor Robledo. If you didn't know me, I've been a strength and conditioning coach for almost 30 years. I actually owned and operated a gymnastics facility as well. I train jiu-jitsu multiple times a week. So I bring in all of this into a new development program. And all the programs that I develop bring in just a little bit more science and a little bit more intuition and also some mindfulness into your programs. And so I'm here today to help you avoid the pitfalls that come along with not necessarily knowing what's best. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of programs out there and people go, okay, I'll jump over here, I'll jump over here, I'll jump over here. And nothing gives you the results that you want. You end up injured, tired, and unmotivated. So if you like this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so it sends out the algorithm that helps me get this message out there. There are a lot of people that are really active, know what they want to do, but don't know exactly what to do. So let's get back to MED, minimum effective dose. Minimum effective dose. And that's actually a term that's used in allopathic medicine. And I actually like to draw upon it. The first time I actually saw this in print was in The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. And what I love about Tim Ferriss is that he always takes himself as a guinea pig and does just the right amount in his fitness routine. He basically wanted to test what was going to get the most results with the minimum amount of output. And he came to find out he could do very little over a month's period and still get the results he wanted. Now, most of my clients are looking for another level of fitness. Most of them will show up at my door a little bit broken, and so I fix the injuries. And then from there, I start pushing them towards understanding what they want in their activity and in their fitness and the goals that they might have. And so I start using this term. And the way I like to think of it is, look, when you go to see a doctor and they're giving you a antibiotic, they want to give you just enough to get the job done. They're not going to give you excessive amounts. It's sort of like your car when you go get an oil change, right? Takes 5 quarts of oil. You're not going to put in 6 quarts just to be safe because that's going to decrease the function of the car. So the same is true with your resistance training. Now, most of my workouts that I design, obviously we have mobility and flexibility, rehab and prehab. That's a critical part. But what I'm talking about right now is with regards to your strength training. Now, we started off with talking about the what and the why with minimum effective dose. Why is that important? Because ultimately, you want to be able to get the results that you want. Now, if you're doing strength training or resistance training, the goal is increasing strength. Yes, there are some other things that are critical components about that. Some people want a little more hypertrophy and muscular shape and muscular size. But it all starts with building a foundation of strength. And in general, when I work my clients with that goal, let's get strong, they're completely happy with how their physique develops, changes, and performs. So that's why it's important to work minimum effective dose. The second thing that we're going to do is talk about which tools, and I talk about tools as the exercises. I always use this term with my clients and go, look, all of these movements that you see, this is in particular, you'll have a client that comes in. Sometimes I have an overlapping client when I've had facilities and they're like, hey, they do that. Why don't I do that? I'm like, well, that's not the right tool for you. So the tools, there are some overlap in what people do, but choosing your tool is critical. The most obvious example is my basketball players, right? And they do a straight bar deadlift, conventional straight bar deadlift. Well, that wreaks havoc on anyone that has really long levers. It's really tough to keep a neutral position. So is that the best tool for an extremely tall, leggy athlete? Probably not. Should they be able to execute the movement just from a functional standpoint? Yes. But is it the tool to create minimum effective dose? In that case, and particularly the client that I'm talking about, it was not. Particularly since it's a hinging action. Yes, it helps with explosive power, but an RDL, for example, is a much better choice for that individual. So choosing your tool. Now, there are some common movements, some common tools that I like to use with all of my clients. So let's break it down simple. You got to push, you got to pull, you got to hinge, you got to squat, and you got some core. That's sort of the critical component. And I usually put some side categories that we call auxiliary movements. I do carries with some people and isometrics and things like that. Curls and things like that are certainly, people always ask me like, hey, can I throw in some curls at the end of my workout? Yeah, if you want, but it's not necessary. So which tools we use, I just described the 5 critical components. There's also lunging movements and single leg movements, but they can actually be subcategories of what we just talked about. Now, choosing your tool. How do you know which tool is critical for you? Well, first off, you can execute it well, right? Second, you're getting the results you want. So some measurability and improvement in strength. Does that mean you need to PR every time you go in there? Actually, I'll talk about that on another video about the dangers of PRing too often. These days, certainly if you come to me and say, I want to be a power lifter, well, we have to get near maxes, probably maxing axillary lifts instead of actually maxing the bar. But if you're looking to improve your sport, what is the best measure? Well, when you go do the sport and you're like, wow, I'm doing better, then why do we need to do the tools are just to help that sport? Now, as a strength and conditioning coach, I love measurability, and there are lots of ways to do that. But one of which is how the athlete is feeling, how it's recovering, how he's recovering is a critical component, and if he's getting stronger. Now, the way individuals move weight, the fluidity which you move it, you can see it all over athletes. They're getting stronger, they're getting leaner, they're developing muscular size. Their hormone production, their injuries, those are all indications of what level of fatigue or recovery they're in. And so oftentimes, one of my pet peeves is people are getting close to maxes, if not trying to break maxes on the monthly, and wearing out their nervous system so much that by the time they go do their sport, they're worn out. Regardless of age, right? And so you're always dragging. And I did a video yesterday on being wired and tired and always dragging. And ultimately, your workouts are adding stress to your body. And so you're feeling always loggy and sluggish. Do less. It's sort of like that line in Forgetting Sarah Marshall where Paul Rudd's trying to coach Peter Segal on how to surf. And he's popping up to the surfboard. He's like, do less, man, do less. Kunu, do less, do less, do less. Well, you got to do more than that. So finding out what is critical for you is based a lot about your execution, your previous history, what kind of movements you do. Now, you can divide all with those 5 that I described. You can have subcategories and figure out which one works for you and which one works for the athletics and hobbies that you enjoy. Now, the last element we're going to talk about with minimum effective dose, we've talked about the what and the why, which tools are most common, and then then we're going to talk about technique. Now, this is where having an extra pair of eyes on you is absolutely critical. And even in my case, I have my kids from time to time like, hey, come on in, record me so I can see it, because you can feel a certain way and even see yourself in the mirror if you have mirrors in your facility or your garage or wherever you're training, and it can actually be off and there can be asymmetries. And this is where a good trainer will help you put pieces together like, oh, this is what I see. Aside from the fact that trainers like myself have developed their eye to pick up nuances in human movement and specific pattern. And so you have to know your client, how they move, what tendencies they have, predisposition for injuries, and then be able to evaluate your technique. Now, there is so much information. You'd think it'd be easy to evaluate technique, but this is where a lot of people struggle. And so you can always video yourself. It's one of the critical components. Look it over, compare and contrast to the great ones, and see how people who execute this with amazing technique look, compare and contrast that way. Or get some help from someone like me, a trainer, or someone else in your local area who can help you. So when you're designing your strength training, think about flipping the switch and then just leaving it alone. I created a Canva, and this part of the reason I wanted to do this video today is to talk about that. And the Canvas said, flip the switch in the gym and leave it alone. And oftentimes clients are what ends up happening is they feel so jazzed and energetic, myself included. I get towards that 30-40 minute part of the workout and it's like, let's do more. I'm jacked up. You got all the adrenaline going from lifting weights, and this is where we get that little bit of a high from it, and you want to keep going. But the challenge becomes this, is that if you ride that out too long, you're already coming down the other side. When you leave the gym and you've done a great workout, you want to be able to leave the gym, feel amazing. And then about an hour after the gym, I tell my clients all this, about an hour after the gym, like, shoot, I could probably go back and do more. And that's how you know you did just enough to create a positive hormone response in your body. Because in the end, we want to be able to create that growth, that change. I say growth and a lot of women cringe, like, I don't want any growth. No. Growth, change, adaptation is the critical component for your strength and conditioning program. So use these steps, guys. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this stuff. It ain't rocket science. The proof is in the great ones. And everything we see in health and fitness has been around since like the 1890s. It's just been redigested and repackaged. So don't complicate it. Keep it simple and find what works for you.